Anita, how's your mental health?
Questionable at all times. You know this.
Yeah, how's the mental health of your children?
Also a little bit tricky. Can I tell you my experience in trying to find therapists for myself and my kids, Mel?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is how it goes. You ask around your friends and your family for a referral for somebody who's nearby. You finally find somebody who sounds like they might work for your family. You give them a call and you find out that A, they're not accepting new patients, or B, they have a huge wait list. So you start over again and you ask people if they know anybody who would be a good therapist and a good fit. Finally, you find one, you go and you meet with them and you figure out that you don't actually like them that much. But it's been so much work to find somebody who you can go to in your area that you're kind of stuck with them. Well, do you have any ideas for how to get around this?
I do, because guess what? I've actually had some therapists that I have found on my own, which involves what you're saying. Sometimes I remember one time I was like 3 hours in the bathtub on my phone looking
Yeah.
through websites. I was such a prune at the end. But I have also had the experience with working with BetterHelp. And it was like, I don't want to say too good to be true, but because it is true, but it's like amazing because I was matched with my therapist within 24 hours.
And you didn't have to go through all of that other ridiculous process of trying to find somebody. And here's the cool thing too, is if that person didn't work out for you, you can just switch and say, and it's not like you're committing to another years long search for somebody who you're going to jive with.
It's true. And I lucked out, or maybe just BetterHelp is really good at matching people together because I never had to change my therapist. I loved her. Perfect fit for me. And I know that some of our friends have used BetterHelp and they've had to change therapists, and boom, same day, you can change.
Easy peasy.
You can ghost your therapist. Get a new one.
I love this idea. BetterHelp is one of our sponsors. If you use our promo code trybetterhelp.com/WWDN, you get 10% off your first month. And we totally recommend it.
Yes, get some therapy. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN. Easter to you, Anita.
And an Easter to you.
Tell me how your day's going.
This morning, the Easter bunny didn't come in a timely manner because she might have been tired and annoyed at things. So eventually, the Easter bunny got the mini Easter bunny to go hide the eggs for her.
Excellent.
Yes, and then we had our little hunt, and then we ate all the candy, and we're hopped up on crazy pills now.
How are you doing in the feelings of grief department because of Easter?
Easter's a weird one for me because it's supposed to be like, if you're Christian, you know, it's supposed to be like it's okay that your dead people are dead day.
Yeah.
But sometimes it doesn't really feel like it helps. I don't like saying that out loud because I feel like it's the wrong thing to say.
Well, I don't have a soul because I am a sociopath, so I'll talk about it.
Okay.
This was one of the first things that I noticed with holidays. So Christmas was right after Scott died. And then, of course, Easter comes. And it feels like sometimes well-meaning churchgoers like to say, well, everything's fine because of Jesus. And I would like to say, cool about Jesus. That doesn't mean that helps me feel better right now. And it's not helping my grief to go away. It's separate in ways. So,
yeah, I feel like it's a paradox because in some ways it does give me comfort, but also it doesn't fix it right now, if that makes sense. Like, I'm like, okay, cool. You know, I believe in an afterlife. I believe that everything's going to be fine at some point in time, but it still sucks right now.
yeah.
But it doesn't suck all the time. It's just hard.
It's hard when that is kind of a blanket statement. Well, you should be okay because this. And it's like, well, I'm not okay. And there's that. So my Easter's been going okay. I played for a series of church services all morning.
Yeah, this would be like a big day for church jobs for you.
Yep. And it's fun because they let me play all the kinds of chords that I want. And there's a rock band, so it's chill. Or not chill. It was good.
Good.
Yeah.
You had a birthday this week?
I had a birthday.
Shout hooray.
My birthday was so good.
Oh.
You know what's great?
What?
Sometimes birthdays and momentous days, like holidays, are met with trepidation. And it's always so nice when the day comes and it's fine. And not even fine, but awesome.
I have a question.
What?
About that.
Go.
Do you think that the reason that your birthday was great is because you're getting far enough out that things are just starting to become normal?
No. Here's why.
Okay.
I've had a pattern with this stuff by now. This is why I say this. There are 2 dates where I have, fingers crossed, not yet had any trauma linked to it. And it's my anniversary with Scott, our wedding anniversary, and my birthday. I don't get it. It's weird. But so far, since he's died, those have been good days for me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like Easter this year was less hard than it has been in the past. And just because it seems like we're in a new pattern and a new groove. And so you're not still thinking about, what it was like or what it should be like. It's like, well, this is just what it's like now. So that's what I wondered about your birthday. Is it just becoming more of the, the regular how it is? But no, that's not your answer.
That's not my answer. I also was talking to somebody about this today. So my trauma does not start with Scott dying. My trauma goes back to like the year, 2005 or so.
The year of our Lord, 2005.
When I was divorced. And so I was divorced at age 23 and then had quite the decade after that with lots of more traumatizing things. So in that time, I noticed that my coping mechanism was to neutralize triggering holidays for me. And also my life's a little different because I am a self-employed musician. And so it's like we never stop working. It's just kind of a different lifestyle as far as work goes. And even if you do have a holiday, it's probably a day where you have a project to get going on, or when everybody else is off, you are on. And so holidays in general are just different for me. But I did notice when I did have time off and there were holidays, I would try to neutralize the emotions for that and maybe just try to make it a normal day. And I've done that for years. So fast forward to Scott dying, of course, the holidays were even more triggering because then I wasn't working because I wasn't able to work, and they were even harder. So I think that the shock is, of course, wearing off now for me, and I've also become comfortable with allowing myself the space to make a decision on if I want to attend events with people or not. And to me, that's been, just because I'm in control of that, that's been the biggest source of calm for me. So I'm kind of learning as I go, I guess. But guess what? Do you want to know what is amazing?
Of course I do.
So I got out of town last week. I went to go to Scott's parents' house. They're cool. They let me bring the dogs. They live in Boise. It's awesome. And it's very calm there. And I started feeling kind of like I was healing because I started doing some new routines. Do you want to hear about it?
Tap dancing routines?
Similar to tap dancing. So in our food buddy group, we're on week 3 this week. We were having the discussion about tapping.
Oh,
because our friend Sunshine reminded me of what Krista said, Krista St. Germain, when we interviewed her. And sometimes when people recommend things that actually know what they're talking about, I get stubborn and I'm like, I'm not going to do it. Or I forget about it. In this case, I forgot about it. And so I decided to try it because Sunshine was trying it too. And it's helped me so much, even after the first 2 times.
We tried it last night, actually.
What did you think?
It was a little bit tricky because it wasn't me. I was doing it with my daughter who was having a freak out. And so I wasn't in a state of distress. Do you know what I'm saying? So it wasn't it was just help you do it. So It helped her.
Good.
So that's good.
The app is called Tapping Solutions. And I think you can do a free 14-day trial period, but then you do have to pay.
I think they have free ones in there too.
I don't know. I just ended up paying because I didn't want to think through it. Yeah, I like to support creators because I'm a creator and I get it. So that's been helpful. And also establishing a routine. So I've started doing meditations when I wake up and before I go to bed.
Wow.
And I feel like my life has changed just in a few days. I feel like I've done a 180. Now that could not hold, but I'm just saying it here.
We'll have the test. We'll know because we've set the standard for the testing parameters. Yeah. Yes.
Yep. I even got a bike.
It's exciting.
Anita can't even handle it that I have a bike now, but it's an e-bike because I'm lazy and I need help.
Sometimes we assume that unless we had a huge life insurance payout, we don't really need to know anything about investments or even finances. But guess what? A little knowledge of finances is critical for all of us. Maybe your partner was in charge of that stuff, and now you find yourself making all the decisions. Maybe you're mad about that. Maybe I am. Nicole from the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast is here to help. She tackles financial literacy by telling the stories of women and widows and finance experts and shares the lessons they've learned as certified financial planners. Whether you know a lot and feel confident in your financial decisions or feel unsure about all of that stuff, there is more to learn. Listen and subscribe to the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast on all podcast platforms. This ad was paid for by Rockhouse Financial, an SEC-registered investment advisor. So we're gonna go for a bike ride, and I will use my own power, and Mel will use the power of the e-bike, plus her power.
Yep. So all in all, a great birthday week, and it was really great to see Scott's parents and to just get away from the normal stress. And I always stay in the room where Scott died and sleep in the same bed where he died, which might sound like it would be really hard, but I've tried to do some work around that where I've reprocessed the memories and I'm feeling pretty good.
Do you think it helps that you never actually saw him in there?
Yeah, I think if I were there, it would not be the same case. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
What about you, Anita? You had an adventure.
Sure did. We went to Arizona, me and my 4 crazy kids, and it was so hard and so fun at the same time. I decided it was 65% awful and so difficult and just tiring and infuriating all at the same time. But 35% was super fun, and the 35% is worth it, especially when you're home and it's behind you.
And it was successful.
Yeah, it was. Oh man, the plane tickets that I bought at the wrong time made our lives so much harder, like so much harder, because we flew in and we got there at 11 o'clock our time. We didn't get to our hotel until about 1 o'clock. And then the kids were crazy because they didn't get enough sleep the whole time. So it's man. The regular vacation off your schedule kind of stuff added to no sleep. And so that was a little bit awful, but I kind of feel like we did it with all of the awful things. So next time we do it, it will be easier because hopefully, fingers crossed also, because we will not do that again.
I have a question about this. Mm-hmm. So the crazy times aside, do you think the length of the trip was good, or did you wish you had another day?
I was ready to come home. I'm not sure I would have been as ready to come home had I not had the snafu with the times, because the kids were just, they were beyond crazy. And I think mostly because of that, we are going to go on another trip at the end of April, and it's going to be a week long, but we're going to be staying in the same place. So this trip, just how it was very crazy. We went from place to place. We had to pack every night. We had to drive somewhere new every night. So it was just a lot to do. So that's why I said, we kind of did the hardest version first. A lot of driving, flights in the airport, late nights, early mornings.
This reminds me of when you're on tour in a band and you have a series of one-nighters
Yeah.
It's hard. Even if you don't have any kids, it's just hard on your body and your life. But when you go to a sit down city, things are more smooth. So good luck with your next trip.
And I gotta say, I loved the cactuses. I think they're amazing and so cool. And I learned so many things. For instance, did you know that a saguaro cactus, which is like the quintessential cactus with the two arms raised to the sky that you think of when you think of, big cactuses, they have to be 75 years old before they grow arms. So those cactuses are like hundreds of years old.
How long does it take to grow an arm to kind of a normal length?
I don't know, but a long time, because they start out as like these little balls and then they grow and grow and grow. So I would guess like the same amount of time, probably 75, 80 years. I don't know.
That's so cool.
I know. And then the woodpeckers, we saw a roadrunner, by the way. That was cool. The woodpeckers peck out holes in them, and then owls live in them. Do you remember the Snoopy movie?
No.
At all? And his cousin Spike?
No.
I'm pretty sure he lived in a cactus. That just came to my brain right now.
Well, welcome back. You're alive.
Yes, alive, tired, a little sunburned. I didn't get to go running or biking the whole time I was out there, which was also hard because that's how I keep my cool. Had a terrible Denny's experience, and Denny's is like a diner here. There's not a good standard for those anyway, but it was severely awful. Met a crazy guy, texted Mel to rescue me. She did not rescue me, so I had to run away from him.
But speaking of rescuing, you rescued me earlier in the week. You guys, Can we tell you one of the perks of having a widow wife on your speed dial?
Mm-hmm.
Here it is. I just went to Walmart to go get something, and I hear cat calls at me coming from the side of the parking lot. They did not stop because I had to park really far back and walk really far to the front. Kept coming. They were at me. And so what did I do? Pulled out my phone and I called my widow wife.
And I answered, and she said, "Save me, Anita, save me." And I said, "Okay." And so we talked about random things to get her away. Yeah.
Their whistling and catcalling did not stop. It was very long. It was very degrading. Why?
Gross.
Why do people think that's cool?
I don't know.
Whatever. Anyway, thank you for saving me. I'm sorry I didn't save you at the Denny's.
It's okay. There was this guy, since I had to wait for my order, he was telling me all about his life. First of all, he told me that he was rich because he bought Bitcoin. Then he told me he used to work for Chicken Soup for the Soul. And before that, he had a master's degree in zoology and worked with big cats at many zoos. And then he threw in there that he was a stand-up comedian. And then he told me that his mother was a nice version of Cruella de Vil, and that he just went to pick her up because his dad died, but he couldn't take a plane because of his kidney transplant.
Oh my gosh. What's the nice version of Cruella? Because she's all
I don't know.
bad.
There is no nice.
She had two-toned hair.
I don't know. I was just like, I don't want to be talking to you. Can't I just play Candy Crush on my phone?
Crap, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Anywho, this Saturday is the second Saturday, which means that we are doing our
Zoom hang run by Autumn Barker. So the times for this are 12 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, Saturday, April 10th, and 7 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, same day. So whatever time that is for you, Google it. And then send us an email at widowwedonow@gmail.com for which time you prefer.
And we'll send you the Zoom link back. Thanks, Autumn, for doing that. It should be fun.
Yes.
We're going to do our patron shout out because we love you guys and we thank you for keeping us afloat.
First, we have our secret widow who would like to say, "Go, widows, go. Disco Inferno."
We'll continue on with Constance Dahlbach,
David Kelly,
Dawn Satterwhite,
Ivan Meisner,
and Kat. Thanks to our dead husbands. We'll go on to our widow wives and widow besties. We'll start with Amy Sapp,
Ashley Hahn,
Danielle Katterberg,
Dennis Brazo,
Jenny Taylor,
Jenny Wang,
Kirsten Stromberg,
woohoo, your episodes right now, Laura Bradbury,
Missy Schubert,
Rachel Barbosa,
Karen Cornejo,
Sarah Morris,
Sylvia Shore,
Anna Tracy,
Christina Scambato,
Christine Anderson,
Diana Becker,
Emily Thornton,
Emily Toledo, Holy Toledo,
Aaron Posick,
Gabe Lozano.
Ileana Bella Ruiz.
I hope this lady makes some delicious deviled eggs today.
Jamie Aliota.
My mom, who's so nice.
Why? What did she do?
She comes to my house every Saturday and helps my kids do chores.
Thanks, Anita's mom. Jenny Barrow.
Joy, the fancy lady.
Katie Radtastic Radcliffe.
Kara Scara.
Lori Farrington.
Marie Hoffman.
And Bellatrix. Marjorie Lewis.
Mary McGowan.
Shannon Helm.
Tammy Schwartz.
Valerie Greenslip Packer.
And Rainbow Wendy. Thank you.
If you would like to join our Patreon, please head over to patreon.com/WWDN. We have 4 tiers, and you get lots of different fun and cool things with each tier that you join.
And if you just want to send us some tacos, then go to buymeacoffee.com/widowwedonow, and we'll go get tacos.
Thanks to everyone who has supported us and is helping us to keep the podcast going and to help us reach more widows and widowers and grief civilians to spread the word.
The good word of grief. Hey, Mel.
What?
Do you have a hard time finding time for self-care?
Sure do.
Would you like it if something showed up on your doorstep every month?
You mean something I did not have to plan myself? Heck yes.
Yeah, something that shows up and gives you ideas for self-care activities, such as bath salts or some nice tea, a candle.
Maybe a book.
Yes.
Melissa was our guest on episode 60, and if you'd like to get to know about her a little bit better, that is who is behind the Widow subscription box.
Each box has 5 to 7 really cool items that she has sourced thoughtfully and is trying to help support widows who make things as well as widows who need self-care.
If you are a widow that makes things, please email us and we can put you in contact with her. She would love to incorporate your goods.
You can choose different levels of subscriptions from 1 month up until a year. These make really great gifts for other people who you think might need some help with self-care, or you can buy them for yourselves.
If you have a widow wife, it's an option for a good gift.
Or just if you have yourself and you want a gift for yourself. Check out filledwithgold.org to find out more information and use our coupon code WWDN to get 10% off your boxes. Go take a bath, Mel.
I will. You know why?
Why?
Because when I care for myself, I can care better for others.
True.
Some of you who are listeners of our podcast and keep up with the episodes may notice that last week we had an extra episode. We are starting to add new widow-sodes on Thursdays. So these are conversations that Anita and I both have had about certain topics, and they're shorties. So keep your eyes peeled for that, and now you get twice the content every week.
It's like double mint gum.
Widow mint, gum.
We hope you guys enjoy our episode today. I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
We're 2 young widows trying to figure out widow
We
do now.
Welcome, Kirsten. I'm sorry you're a widow. That's why you're here.
Thank you. I'm sorry too, but glad that I found you.
I came across Kirsten in another widow group that we're in, and I have mixed feelings about that group because there's a lot of very strong opinions that are not always in line with treating things in an empathetic way. That's how this came about, and we're going to get to that whole conversation where she made a post soon. But first, we would like to hear a little bit about you, Kirsten.
So I am originally from Boise, Idaho. I've lived a lot of different places, but I usually end up in either Salt Lake or Boise. In 2016, was taking a job promotion, and the job required me to move down to Salt Lake. And I thought, I don't want to go down there and not know anybody. I knew a couple people. They were married with kids. I was single. I was 38. And so I got online and I met my husband right away. And so we had known each other for a few months prior to me moving down there. I got down there and we were just connected. We never left each other's side. We were like, oh, this is it. And so in 2016, we met, were engaged, and married within a 7-month time period. And he had been married before, but it was my first marriage. We were both in late 30s, and we thought, we'll figure it out along the way. Early in our courtship, Cody had shared a couple of things with me. One of them was about his youngest brother. His name is Blake, and Blake passed away from leukemia in 2010. And they talked about Blake quite a bit, but never really the details around his death. I just knew that he had leukemia. Cody was very close to him. Cody talked about him a lot, but it was a sad thing. He missed brother quite a bit. And so just a little bit of detail on Blake. Blake had what's called myeloid dysplasia syndrome, which is a pre-leukemia that had turned into acute myeloid leukemia after a couple of bone marrow transplants. And they both failed, and ultimately he passed away. And the doctor, and of course, I'm like dating Cody, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of heavy. Like, does that mean you're going to get leukemia? And he said, no, the doctor said that this is a result of radiation that his brother had from hip issues that he had as a child. And that leukemia is very, very rarely hereditary. So, Blake has always been my brother-in-law, even though I never knew him. The other thing that Cody really wanted me to know when we got married was that he was not staying in Utah. And I was game with that. We decided 3 years in Utah, and then we were going to move. So in 2019, we sold a whole bunch of our stuff, packed up the moving vans, and we moved to Memphis, Tennessee. And we bought a house out there, and it was beautiful. We didn't know a single soul out there when we got there. And 9 months after we got there, we had just bought and moved into a brand new house. Cody started to complain of an earache and a sore throat. He is also a type 1 diabetic, so any illness for a diabetic is a concern.
But earaches don't generally end in death. You're not like, earache, you're going to die, right?
Well, that is correct, but this was April of 2020. So what happened April of 2020? The world shut down because of COVID. And he was teaching at the time. He was a teacher. And so we were thinking, we called his endocrinologist right away, and they said, yeah, we think this is COVID. And they said, quarantine, stay at home, keep his fever down. And we did all those things. We sent him to go get tested for COVID. The test came back negative. Within a couple of days of having that negative test, we had 3 different doctors call us and say, no, this is COVID. He is sick. You have to quarantine. You have to stay at home. Like, it's a false negative. The test is wrong. He's got COVID. So for a month, we really battled trying to keep his fever down and keep him healthy. And then his fever started to go away. So we got him into the doctor's office finally to do some blood work. And the blood work revealed that he was severely anemic and needed a blood transfusion. So we rushed him to the emergency room, and they end up keeping him. And again, time of COVID, I can't get into the hospital. He's in there by himself, and we can't figure out why they're keeping him. We're like, just give him the blood transfusion so he can come home. And he calls one day, FaceTimes me, and he says, Sweets. That's what he always called me, was Sweets. There's a doctor here that's telling me it's leukemia. And I was like, what? That can't be. It can't. That's way too coincidental that your brother would have leukemia and you have leukemia. Like, that just doesn't make sense. And we've got his dad on the phone, and we're trying to make sense of it. And so the doctor's going through doctor's going through his stuff, talking about the cell mutations and how this really does appear to be a leukemia, but they don't know what type it is. It could be minor, it could be major, it could be the best possible case, it could be the worst possible case. And the doctor's on FaceTime with me, and he stops, and I say, "Doctor, this is the dumbest thing I've ever said." I said, "Doctor, are you telling me that my husband's life is in danger?" He goes, yeah, it's cancer. I mean, we're really thinking it's cancer. And it was acute myeloid leukemia, also called AML. And we also found out that it also came from the pre-leukemia myeloid dysplasia syndrome, also called MDS. And so the doctor's ears perked and said, "This is very unusual. How could two brothers in the same family have this?" They are MDS is quite rare, and it's very rare in individuals under the age of 60.
Did they grow up on top of a nuclear power plant? Or did they drink water that glowed in the dark?
Are they downwinders? Are you sure they're not from Pocatello?
No, and yeah. Honestly, that was something that the doctors started to look at, was environmental exposure. And they fairly quickly ruled that out, but they didn't know what else it could have been. So Cody is being treated in the hospital in Memphis, and my family and his family are 1,500 miles away. Everybody's trying to figure out how to help us. We have no local help because no one's going into each other's houses. We don't know our neighbors. We were only there in that neighborhood for 2 weeks before the world kind of shut down on us. And then, Cody's going crazy in the hospital because he can't have visitors, and I'm going crazy at home. And so my parents came and went a couple of times, but it was hell. It was so, so hard. And then in July-ish, we got a call that Cody's chemo had failed for the third time. He had multiple rounds of 3 different kinds of chemo, and they, at the same time, said he's got an abscess in his body that is septic because he didn't have an immune system for months. And they said, "That's got to come out. We've got to take out the flesh, and we're hoping he can recover from it without getting an infection that his body can't fight. Oh, and also we're going to try and treat him with 3 kinds of chemo all at once that is so intense that the chemo itself could kill him." And I collapsed. I was alone. He was at the hospital, and I collapsed. And I don't know how long I laid there, but it was a long time. And his parents, we talked, and they said, "We're coming. We're fine. We're going to come. We think it's time." Because we really didn't know if Cody was going to make it through the night. And they got there, and Cody made it through the night. And actually, he handled the chemo very well. And he never got an infection from the surgery, from removing that septic flesh. However, Cody's parents had been there for 1 day, 24 hours, and they get a call from their other son named Jared. And Jared calls and says, "My leg is swollen. Something is super weird. It could be from the 20-mile bike ride I just took. Maybe it's not. I'm not sure what to do." The family's already on heightened alert because of Cody's situation and already losing Blake. And they tell Jared, "Go and get it checked out." And I think it was the next day that Jared called and said, "You're not going to believe this, but my blood counts are low." And his poor parents, they had just come to be with us. And Cody, they can't even see Cody. Cody's in the hospital. Like, we couldn't even get to him. And Jared is finding out that he also has MDS.
Shut the front door. And you're sure they didn't grow up on a nuclear
Well,
power
we
plant?
did end up finding out what it is. The fact that all 3 of the brothers, and we actually didn't find this out until very, very recently. Cody's parents both have a recessive gene. And those 2 recessive genes created in all three of the boys what's called Schwartzman-Diamond syndrome.
Well, that sounds fancy. I mean, if nothing else, you've got such a fancy name. Yes, it probably was.
Sounds like a watch, right?
Yes.
It took, so what ended up happening is Jared went to Huntsman Cancer in Utah, and then we were sent to MD Anderson because Memphis basically said there's no more we can do for Cody, and they said if we would get you down to MD Anderson. So we packed up and went to MD Anderson, and Jared continued on his treatment plan. He luckily had chemo that worked the very first time and received a bone marrow transplant in November, this last November. However, Cody's chemo treatments continued to fail because his leukemia was just so aggressive. And we got a point in late November, right after our wedding anniversary on November 19th, where Cody caught pneumonia. We were luckily at MD Anderson, they had different rules about visitors. So when we were there for 3 months. I could go in with him and I could stay with him, but I couldn't leave. If I left, I couldn't come back. And he was only allowed one visitor, which was fine. And we were the only people that we knew in Houston. We didn't know anybody else there. But when he caught pneumonia, one of his lungs filled up with liquid, and I knew that was kind of the beginning of the end. His kidneys had stopped working correctly, and then his lungs had filled with fluid, and one of his lungs, and he was really struggling to breathe. And so they put him on BiPAP, and which is, the mask. It's not intubation. It's kind of in between, the oxygen,
it's like supported
cannula.
breathing without a tube down your throat.
Yeah, exactly.
Medical professional. I'll explain.
I was just waiting for you to jump in and help me with that. But he was on BiPAP, and the doctor, this was the weekend of Thanksgiving, and so there were like no doctors on staff. So when this happened, the on-call doctor had to come in, and he just pulled me out of the room and he said, "This is not good." And I said, "I know, but so you're a doctor, you fix it." And he said, I need to know if you want to put a DNR in place or not. And my world quickly spun out of control, because he was telling me, "I don't have any hope. And do you really want to continue down this path of preserving life in this situation?" Luckily, I was able to ask Cody, and he said, "I don't want to do this anymore. I'm so uncomfortable. I'm miserable." He again, diabetic. He had zero control over his diabetes treatment. While he was in there, he couldn't control his own insulin intake. And he had been, over the course of the 9 months that he was sick, he had been in the hospital for about 5.5 of those months. And by the way, let me just tell you this. I would have nurses tell me all the time that patients in the hospital were having delusions because they were so lonely and they had no visitors and they couldn't leave their room. Like, that is how awful those rules are. But anyway, so Cody's on BiPAP, and he says, I think I'm done with this fight. I just don't know that I have any more in me. And so we agreed to the do not resuscitate. We agreed to saying no intubation. And they said he has about 12 to 24 hours left. And so we got all the family on the phone and we all said our goodbyes. And then he rallied for 7 days. He lived for 7 days.
They always do that.
Yeah. He did. And he started to get better, and his breathing started to get better. And the rallying allowed his parents to get to Houston. It allowed my parents to get to Houston. And through some miracle, and actually a technicality that involved me, that is a whole different story, both my parents and his parents were able to come in. Oh, I'll tell you if you want to know.
I'm like, I'm so confused.
I'm going to tell you. So what happened was actually just right at the beginning of the 7 days, the last 7 days, I was very emotional. I was having panic attacks, and I was talking to Cody in a way that would be very familiar to our beliefs. I was talking that I'll be there soon. It won't be long. You'll see your brother. And some nurses got wind of the language that I was using, and they admitted me for a suicide watch.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
What is that called? Like section, or they like rule? There's some rule that's like rule 44 where you they do it against your will.
Yes, that's exactly what happened. I was in the room with Cody, and about 7 people came into the room and said, "You have no choice. We are admitting you." Yes, and I initially thought they were going to take me to talk to someone like a chaplain, or yeah. No, they took me down to the emergency room. They admitted me, and they refused to let me see my husband for 24 hours.
Oh man.
Gosh.
I had to have a babysitter, literally someone who sat with me. They couldn't let me out of their sight. I was in a totally different room on a totally different floor. And they completely took me away from him for a solid 24 hours. And I was livid. I mean, beyond angry. And I'm just screaming and yelling, "My husband's dying. I need to be there. My husband's dying." And they would not let me go.
And they were like, "See,
she's
something's wrong with her. she's not okay." And you're like, "I'm not, obviously."
I mean, I told them, I mean, security was involved, and I just kept saying, "This is grief. This is grief. I'm grieving. My husband's going to die." And only when, and this was over Thanksgiving weekend, so no one was there. Only when the head of psychiatry got involved, and he came to my room and he said, "This never should have happened. Go be with your husband."
Oh, good.
Thank you.
So I was able, but because of that technicality, I was technically a patient, so
you
I
got
could have
visitor.
Yes, yep. That's exactly what I know. So a little bit of a blessing in disguise. I mean, I'm still so angry about that whole thing, but it did allow my parents to come and be with me and be with him. And then when his parents arrived, they could be with me and they could be with him. And he, like I said, he ended up seeming like he was doing a little bit better. And so I went to the doctors and I said, "Oh, I think he's improving. This is so like Cody, to just get to the very last minute and then be like, 'Hey, I'm okay.'" And the doctor pulled me and his parents aside and said, "I'm going to be honest with you. Even if his lungs are improving, if the liquid is leaving his lungs, however that whole thing works, he has less than a 1% chance of having a chemotherapy work for him at this point. Because the more chemotherapy you have that fails, the more you become immune to chemotherapy." And so that was the point where I just, really had to say this was the end. And we did have those talks that you guys have talked a lot about. I asked him, "What do you want me to do with our cars? What do you want me to do with the house? Where do you want me to live? Do you want me to be married again? Are you uncomfortable with that?" And in fact, I think I asked too many questions, because at one point he said, "Can you stop talking? I really just want to go to sleep."
Oh my gosh. Hey, good job for being on it.
I know. I didn't shut up. I was,
You're like so practical about it.
He's like, "Let me die in peace, woman."
Well, he kind of was. He kind of was like, "Can I have some more morphine and go to sleep?" And he passed away on December 5th, so just 10, 11 weeks ago. And I was there. I stayed at the hospital through the whole time period. I held his hand, and I, it escorted him from this life.
So how long between diagnosis and his death? It seems like that was pretty quick.
It was 9 months.
Okay, so that's not super quick, but also in the middle. It's not super
Yeah.
long or super quick, but kind of quick, I feel like.
And you're talking to us, and it's only been 10 weeks.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Well, it's because I just never shut up about it, because that's the stage I'm in right now.
Woman, leave us in peace. A lot of people who experience a cancer journey, they have that reprieve and the hope, and then it comes back. And you guys never did that. You marched down the hill the whole time, right? It was like, this isn't working, this isn't working, this isn't working, basically. I don't know which is better, to have some hope and then have it dashed, or to just be like, nope.
It was everything in me for 9 months to have any hope. It was frustrating to my family. It was frustrating to my parents and even his parents, because they were so hopeful. But for me, it was very different. I felt very different from the very beginning. I felt like this was going to be very bad. I knew that it wasn't going to end the way I wanted it to end, even though I had just the tiniest bit of hope that it would. I just really felt like this wasn't going to end the way I wanted it to. And that was first, that was really, really hard for the people that were trying to support me, and frustrating. I'm calling them in tears, and they're saying, why can't you just be positive? Why can't you just have hope? And I don't know. I was grieving. I was terrified, and I was, whammy after whammy of this failed, and this failed, and this failed, and this failed. And it was just a whammy every single time.
Don't you hate being right? You were right from the beginning, which sucks. Usually being right's awesome, but this case, not.
It sounds to me, though, like you should have been committed way earlier. The alive brother is doing okay, doing well, like in remission. What's his status?
So live brother is doing well. He luckily was able to get to a bone marrow transplant, which is what my husband needed, but we never could get there because you have to be in remission to get it. I was just listening to the last podcast this morning, and you were talking about trying to be happy for your sister and her engagement. And this is where everybody's going to say, this girl is a jerk.
No.
It is the hardest thing for me to talk about my brother-in-law, to think about my brother-in-law, to see his face, to hear his name, to hear his wife's name. It just spiraled downwards. It's so hard, and it's so complicated.
Yeah.
Because I don't want anything bad to happen to him. I do not want them to go through what Cody and I went through. But I'm so mad that he lived and Cody didn't. It's so complicated.
I don't think anybody who is listening to this podcast will fault you for those feelings at all. And actually, I think that other people will feel comforted hearing you say that.
I hope so, because I feel like a big jerk every day.
Well, maybe you are, but it's
okay
for other reasons.
That's what's so annoying about this whole widow journey. It's because you're able to recognize those feelings of, I should not be feeling like this towards other people, but I do. But I'm also grieving hardcore, and trying to deal with not judging yourself is so hard. And it's also real. It's like, yeah, why didn't he die? Why did I get the one that died? And what's the situation with your brother-in-law? Does he have kids?
He has one son. And what, just going back to that genetics piece of it, what we have learned is that Cody's daughters, my stepdaughters, and his brother's son are definitely carriers of the genetic deformation, I guess, if that's the right word. So they, will have to be tested, or when they get married and decide to have kids, they might want to, test their spouse. But he does have a son, and they really are a beautiful and loving and caring family. And I often wonder if maybe I don't even know what word to use to describe it. The jealousy, the anger, the whatever, the very, very confusing feelings is related at all to me pulling away from something that could hurt me in addition to the hurt that I'm already experiencing.
Just an update for this episode. Earlier, we were talking about how Kirsten's other brother-in-law was in remission for his cancer. Unfortunately, within the last few weeks, his cancer is now not in remission. So we are sending prayers and vibes and all of the things to him and his family. Boo, cancer. It's a big ball of barf.
Yes, it is.
It's like a fur ball, like that the cat barfs up.
And also, my gosh, you were dealing with this through the pandemic, through COVID. You had moved out of the area where you had been previously and had a new house, and then all of this stuff happened. And now you're back in Boise, right? Mm-hmm. So you've had a whirlwind of change, and it's all hard. Even just one of those things by itself would be so hard. Just a move, like, that's hard, and all that stuff on top. So I don't think anybody would ever fault you for those things that you're feeling and experiencing. And it's also only been 10 weeks, even though it probably feels like confusing with time, where it's like, well, wait, I remember him like he was just here, but also it feels like he's been gone forever. Mm-hmm. And then with the complexity of, well, he had one brother that died, but the other one's here, and then they had their own children, and I don't know if that was an issue. It's people's own business and their own situation with having kids and stuff, but for some people that maybe wanted kids of their own and didn't get them, there's a whole other layer of it on there. And this actually leads into where I came across you in that group. So would you like to talk a little bit about that? Because this is so important, because I feel this way so much as a widow that doesn't have kids. And I don't feel like this way all the time, but in certain situations, yes. And you had written this post that was totally innocent and just looking for help and support, and you got jumped all over. And talk about that, please. And let's get into that discussion.
First of all, Cody and I, we were married in our late 30s, and we kind of had the approach to having children of, if it happens, it happens. It's supposed to be if it does. And I did, in fact, get pregnant. I got pregnant twice, but I lost both pregnancies. And after the second pregnancy, I told Cody, I can't take any more heartbreak. I can't do it.
Ha ha. Yes, you can.
I know.
Joke's on you.
You have no idea what's ahead of you. And I really regret that decision. Cody had 2 daughters from his first marriage, and I have what we need. I don't think we need to have kids. And so we didn't necessarily, try to stop it from happening, but we weren't actively trying. And so when I lost Cody, I lost access to his stepdaughters because I am not a legal guardian of them. They have their mom and their stepdad, and they have a lovely family. And so that's, that was really tough. And so I had put out there on another post, just because I was reading, and like Mel said, this group is older, mostly. I think there are some people who were married 40, 50 years. There may be people like me, but so much of the conversation revolved around, how do I move forward with my family? And I needed to know if I was the only one that didn't have kids, for no other reason than I just wanted to know if there was anybody else like me. It did not go that way. It did not go that way. It was very unfortunate. I had just put out there, I'm feeling a little bit like I don't fit in to the traditional widow discussions because I didn't have children. And is there anybody like me? And there were a whole lot of people that said, how dare you feel this way? Really? How dare you feel this way? No one's making you feel unwelcome. Or I got a lot of, you need to try harder to fit in. Or, well, I don't have kids at home, so I'm in the same boat. And well, luckily, Mel kind of came to my rescue and was like, hey, I hear you. And what was actually really disheartening about it is that there were a lot of people like me and like Mel who didn't have that traditional family structure with their spouse who passed away and never had kids. And I received an abundance of private messages from women who felt the exact same way that I did, but were afraid to say it in the forum for fear of judgment, for fear of people wouldn't understand that was a difficult thing for them and that they didn't feel like they fit. So sweet Mel is like, I'm like you, let's talk.
Here's the thing that is always so interesting and fascinating to me is the idea of synchronicity is so real. And I think I've seen it a lot in my life, even pre Scott's death, but especially post death, where it's like the powers that be or the universe or your dead ancestors or your spirit guides or whoever. I feel like there are many times where things synchronize with each other, because the funny thing about the timing of your post, Kirsten, is that Anita and I were actually like discussing this very thing, because as you know, our listeners, we love all of them no matter what their situation is. We're concerned that widows that were not married are considered widows because it doesn't matter if they had a piece of paper or not. We're concerned with the widowed moms because they have so many complexities to their situation. And Anita is in that boat. And then we're also concerned with, among other things, widows that have no kids that feel like imposters, which is the boat that I'm in. And I've talked about it a little bit before on the podcast, but we haven't specifically intentionally done an episode on this. And so this is where the synchronicity comes in. It's because Anita and I were both having like serious discussions, which is hard for us because we're joking all the time about this very thing. And then here comes your post. And it was like, you guys, I don't remember exactly what Kirsten said, but there was not one thing about it that you would read and take the wrong way. That's what I think really affected me with this. And Anita's in the same group, and I, as soon as I saw that, I was like, did you see that whole conversation?
I'd already read it.
She had already read it.
I'd read all the comments. I was like,
yeah. That particular group that we're in, we creep on it a lot, and it's scary to comment sometimes because there tends to be some closed-minded thinking in there, and of course, when everybody's in their grief, you want to be careful as a fellow griever to not tip them off. And so I think a lot of people just don't say things. But also within our podcast lives, we get emails from people too, where they write to us and they say, thank you so much for including me as a widow, because I feel like an imposter because of my situation, which is XYZ. And basically it seems like so many people feel like imposters, right?
I kind of feel like there's more imposters than there are legitimate widows when you add all them up together.
Yeah.
And so I think you actually might have gone back in on your post, Kirsten, and because I think in my comment to you. I said something about imposters and you're like, that's the word I was looking for. And you reframed it. But it was mind blowing. I think I even showed my mom. I'm like, Mom, look how rude all these people are being. Look what they're saying. And it's just like, yeah, oh, I know what you're going through. I'm an empty nester and this and that. And it's like, no, you guys, it's a different situation when your ability and your choice to have kids or not was taken away because of a death. Totally different thing. Yes, it's definitely, I'm sure, very hard to be an empty nester and you are alone. But it's different. And that's what I really love about our listeners with this podcast and our Widow Wives Club group, which is ultimately what I said, Kirsten, you need to be in this group because there is like, we have people of all walks of life in all the situations, and I've never one time seen any sort of post that would make anybody feel bad about what they're going through. Not one. So shout out to all of you guys for being so awesome. And you shared that people were reaching out and saying stuff, and it's like, that's what the thing is. It's like people that don't have kids or feel like an imposter or were not actually married legally or whatever the situation is. Mm-hmm. They say, I'm not comfortable reaching out in the public forum. Mm-hmm. And so the communication is private. And that's why we are not aware of it as much. And so it's been eye-opening to me just through those private messages, probably like you too, Kirsten, that there are tons of people that feel this way, that are scared to offend others, or like, I don't want to upset the moms that have lots of problems and like lots of stress because I realize I don't have that. And I don't want them to think that I'm ungrateful because I'm sad and I don't have kids.
Yeah. I think a lot of what happened in that post was grief competition. Because I think a lot of people saw that as, are you trying to say that your grief is worse than mine because you didn't have kids? And it felt so unsettling how people were really doing their best to try and say, you're wrong. You should not feel this way. Or I am just like you, even though I was married for 60 years and I'm 84 years old. It was just, it was crazy. And I really didn't see what I was asking as any different than anybody else would ask in their own complex state of grief, right? Because I see posts a lot. I'm a mother of young children. How are you guys handling this? I'm an empty nester. I'm struggling. How are you guys handling this? And I just wanted to know, is there anybody here that is like me? Because when Cody died, all of my decisions that I had to make were about me and only me. And that feeling was hard for me, that I didn't have anybody else to think of in making these decisions. I wanted so badly to say, well, this would be the right thing for me and Cody and the girls, but I didn't have that anymore. It was just me. And so, and I'm learning with grief. Grief is grief. I do believe that grief is grief, but each one of us have our own complexities that add to the grief. Anita, you have your complexity of having 4 young children and being a single parent. And Mel, you have, your different things, and I have my different, everybody has their own complexities, but anyway, it sucked. It sucked.
When I read that, I thought that people had gone to a defensive posture, and I think you're right that it was it became a grief competition. And the other thing it was a lot of, I need you, Kirsten, to come to me. I'm not coming to you, if that makes sense. Like, you need to see it my way. You need to see how you do fit in, instead of saying like, oh, that is interesting. I never thought about how hard it would be. And actually, I've thought about this in talking to Mel, how the grief would be so different for me if I had wanted to have a family and felt like that was taken away from me. Heartbreaking to be like, that's what I wanted. I didn't get to make that choice. And that's just a different hurt that deserves all of the same kindness. Kindness?
Compassion.
Consideration for your consideration. Here is my hurt. I couldn't comment publicly because you turned off the comments by the time I got
I had
to.
I had to turn them off. It was ridiculous.
And the whole point of empathy, like we've talked about, is meeting somebody where they are and not asking them to come to meet you where you are. So, and all of those people, I'm sure, are wonderful people. And they, Mel's like, no, they're not. They have their own problems too. They have their own issues and their struggles too. So
yeah. It's hard no matter what. I think this is just good to open up the conversation. So hopefully those that don't feel like they belong, which guys, everybody belongs no matter what. It's fine. You belong. You matter. You're important. 0 kids or 15 kids. If you have 15 kids, I'm really sorry because that's a lot to deal with by yourself.
Yeah.
I've just come to realize it's just different hurts or different pain that is not the same, but is of the same caliber. And one is not more valuable than the other. And Kirsten, how long were you guys married?
We were married for 4 years.
Okay. Yeah. Mel and I were talking about this too, just how being married for a short time can also lend to that feeling like an imposter, because the thought is people are like, well, your life isn't that changed. You were only married for a little while. So, I mean, you're just going to go back to how it was before and, you'll just find a new person. And we were talking about how that's a different hurt. And if I had to choose, I would absolutely choose having the memories and having those be gone than to be like, I didn't get a chance to make those memories. I didn't have a chance to go to Glacier National Park or, Big Ben or whatever. I've never been to either of those places. But you know what I'm saying? Like that grief would be so heavy to know that you'd never had the opportunity to, again, that opportunity had been taken from you and you didn't even get to rely on those pictures or those photographs or those memories. And it's like you got robbed before you had a chance.
Yeah, before anything could get going. Well, and I don't know about you, Kirsten, but it's like with everybody that has a dead person, there is an end to all the pictures that you have with them. And for those of us that maybe just had a few short years with them, that's the case. I mean, I think I said that in one of my birthday tribute posts to Scott or a death anniversary or something, where it's like, man, I just hope people understand, like if they look at my post and they're like, she used that picture already, or I hope they understand that it's only because I have a limited finite number. I have 5 pictures. And at this point I've been a widow as long as we were married.
I posted something about that. I've been very, very open on my social media pages about my grief and our experience and things that I was feeling and thinking, and really not for anybody to feel like they had to do that for me. But I feel this pull to educate others on, the do's and don'ts of grief. And I had put something out there that how much I regretted all of the pictures that I had deleted of us because I didn't look good.
That's so funny, not funny.
Yeah.
I just bought a new phone instead of like moving storage and things like that. I was like, I'm just going to get a new phone because I'm the same way. Like, you never know if that one picture of that one person picking their nose is going to be the last picture you have of that person. So you cannot delete any pictures, which is probably like a mania in its own way and probably not healthy. There's got to be a balance, but I have yet to find it. And I hear you.
Yeah. And to your point, Anita, I think one of the hardest things that has happened to me, and maybe Mel, you have some experience with this, is one of the most hurtful things that has been said to me so far is, well, you were single for so long, so you know how to do it. You'll be fine. And I felt like that was completely erasing the time that I had with my husband. So, grief civilians, don't say that. Just don't say it.
Yeah.
It's hurtful. Don't say it.
I totally relate to that for sure. Well, because here's the thing too. It's like, it's okay for us to have those thoughts because it's our life. But when somebody says that to us, it's a whole different story. When Scott died, my first thoughts were, well, besides, okay, I have to pay for a funeral now. How does this happen? Well, I've been single for so long. I know how to do it. I'm not worried about knowing how to be single. And I'll figure it out because a lot of my life has been that. And I have skills and I have a job and I'm in a work community where I know I can support myself. But that's mine to take on. That's not if somebody else says it, it diminishes, like you said, and it erases it. And it's like, are you really telling me that that is not important? Or, it's hard. These are hard conversations. And I'm glad we're talking about it because I hope that it opens it up for some more people to feel like it's okay to be in whatever their situation is. Nobody could control this stuff.
Yeah.
Unless they murdered their husband, then they did.
Which I did not do.
We did hear that you had to be committed, though. So we're just going to keep coming back to that.
So, Kirsten, in the meantime, since you heard from all those people kind of under the radar in private messages after that post, have you kept in contact with some of them and have you formed some friendships?
I have. Yeah. In fact, one lady in particular, she lives in Virginia, and we just exchanged care packages.
Aww. Are you widow wives in progress?
I don't know.
Okay.
But
Too soon to tell. Too soon to commit.
Too soon. Yeah, it's so early in the relationship, But actually, Mel had introduced me to the podcast, but at the same time, another young widow without children had also reached out to me. Her name is Missy, and she's a listener, and she is a doll, and I love her already. And we exchange music of, things that remind us of our spouses and share our playlists. And so it's just, it just provides so much comfort to know that someone is in your same situation. And, like you would get comfort from someone who is raising 4 kids on their own as well. We all have different connections and complexities, and we just be here for each other. Just love one another and be here for each other.
Do you think that your situation is a little bit different also than like people who are in their early 20s or things like that don't have kids? Because most people your age are already parents, if that makes sense. And so you're kind of like in another weird category, because if your husband dies really young, it's like, well, we didn't have a chance to have kids yet. But it's like, well, if you're 38, you should have already had kids. And so then you're like, I was already like on the outs because I was single and didn't have kids when I was 38, and now like you're even more on the outs because now you're a widow who's 30 or 40 something now.
Let's just say 40. It's a good round number.
Yeah, okay.
So to answer that question, I was on a different forum, and it was about young widows and dating. And I don't know why I ever did it, and I regret it wholeheartedly. It wasn't a dating site, but it was just about widows and dating. And one person posted something about never dating non-marrieds or no kids. And all of these guys started to jump in and say, I will never date a woman with no kids, because to me, that means she was too into her career to be devoted as a mother. And this is just comment after comment after comment. Yeah. I saw, so I commented, of course, and I said, I tried. I couldn't carry a pregnancy, and I do have a career, but I would have given it all up if it meant having a family.
Or you can do both. Or hello, do we live in the 1912s? I don't know.
So, and that was kind of that age group of that late 30s, early 40s people that were saying, I've got kids. I did this magnanimous thing, and I was a parent. And so anybody that I'm going to let into my life has to have given of themselves in this way.
Can I just say that this is so funny because in my brain, and one of my friends that I met up with who I went to high school with, and she also has 4 kids and her husband's dead, also from leukemia, BTW. We were talking about it and I'm like, if I were ever to get in a relationship, that person cannot have any kids because I don't want to take care of anybody else's kids. So I'm like the exact opposite. I'm like, no, I want to never married or no kids because ew, I don't want to have to, I want all the attention to be for me and my kids. I can't take care of anybody else. So that's so funny that they were opposite of that.
Oh yeah, it was brutal. It was brutal. And I had to leave that one too, because I'm not about that. I'm not about digging on anybody else. And actually someone had commented and said, I am so disappointed in the judgmental nature of the individuals on this post. And no, but it's a lot to learn, even with the grieving community, there's a lot to learn.
Yeah, that's true. And that's another myth of grief is that because you've been through it, you know what to do. I say stupid stuff all the time, and like I was saying before, it's all about being kind of introspective and thinking like, actually, and I don't know if you probably can't answer this, Kirsten, because you're so new at this, but I felt like in the beginning stages, I was like, oh, I know what to do now. And now I'm like, actually, I don't think I know what to do. So maybe you'll find out that you're like, actually, I don't know what I'm talking about, which has happened a lot in my life.
Yeah, my favorite statement right now is, I don't know how to do this. And that was my statement during the whole time that Cody was ill, was, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this. And yeah, I was single until I was 38. I don't know how to do this. I don't know. I don't know how to be a widow. I'm learning.
We know. You need a hat with some netting over it. It has to be black with a little rose made out of satin.
Can be felt.
And you have to wear black for 1 year only.
That's totally reasonable.
Kirsten.
The widow Stromberg.
Do you want to hear actually my prescription for you?
Yes.
Okay. So this is Anita's prescription for I can't do this. I remember driving up to the cemetery, which is just above my house. I had to drive away from my kids because I was so angry that something bad was going to happen. Okay. It was not good. I drove up there and I just cried and I screamed over and over and over, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. And the thought popped into my mind, what is this? And I was like, what is this? And I said to myself, well, this is raising 4 kids by myself. And you get to define your what is this, however this is for you. This is going to be confusing. And I said to myself, okay, I can't do this. And so then I said, divide that in half. Okay, can I raise them until this point? Nope, still too much. Divide it in half again. Divide it in half, divide it in half, divide it in half until it is something you can do. And I got to the point where I was like, I can make them a quesadilla for dinner. I can do this. Anything bigger than this is too big. But that is how I have dealt with all of the times that I say, I can't do this, is to divide it until it is so small that you can do it.
I love that.
And so far, my this has gotten bigger. It used to be so small and now I'm like, okay, we can make it through the week. I can be a parent for this week or I can be, anyway, that's my prescription for you. After I just said, I don't know what I'm doing.
Applying now.
But you have to still wear the hat.
I just Amazoned it. It's on its way. We're going to be good.
Kirsten, I'm so glad that we met, even though it's for an unfortunate reason. You're awesome. You are our people. And you fit in no matter what.
Thank you, Mel, for letting me be the interloper today and to be the one who does not fit in.
Oh, thanks a lot. Now you know how it feels.
Thank you for joining us today for this lovely episode. We hope that we have found other people who can connect and who feel unity with Kirsten and her story. So thank you for joining us. Remember to check out our Patreon. It's patreon.com/WWDN. Give us a rating and review, or I will hunt you down and we will become the subjects of Mel's and Kirsten's love of true crime. You can buy us a taco at buymeacoffee.com/
Widow-we-do-now.
Check out the Widow Wives Club.
Search for Widow Wives Club on Facebook and answer all the questions and follow through with all the things you are asked to do.
Have a nice day.
Thank you very much.
Until we talk to you again, I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
And I'm Kirsten.
We're just two young widows and an imposter, and we're trying to figure out.
Widow-we-do-now. Blah. This is my favorite thing to discuss with you.
Tell me, what is it?
One of my favorite things. I do enjoy tacos and cheese and dogs. This is about how you cannot pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a phone plan, especially when you're a widow, your person is dead, you might have kids, you might need another option, and you just want your phone to work, you want unlimited texting and service, and you want it to be like $25 a month.
It blows my mind that they have plans that start at $15 a month. That is so cheap. And the cool thing is it uses other 5G networks, and so you don't have to pay extra for that, and you still get great service.
Yep, Anita and I have traveled all over, and I have used my phone. So I highly recommend it, and my mom's even on it. When my dad died, we put his phone down to the cheapest plan, which is $15 a month. And I think my mom's on the $20 a month plan, and it's so worth it. It's so much cheaper than what we were all paying before. So I highly recommend it if you're on a budget or not. Who cares? Ryan Reynolds is in charge of the company, and they send you free stickers with Ryan Reynolds temporary tattoos. It's kind of the best. So if somebody wants to sign up, what can they do, Anita?
Go to trymintmobile.com/WWDN. Seriously, you guys, such a great idea. Save yourself some money.
And if you're worried about losing data or having any changes with your phone, not going to happen. They walk you through it. Everything's fine. It's the easiest process of all time. Again, that's
trymintmobile.com/WWDN.